The millionaire walked into his house certain he would find his son in the wheelchair, as always, until he witnessed the impossible right before his eyes. Mark Bennett had more money than he could ever spend, but none of it mattered anymore. Not since that rainy night 3 years ago when a truck ran a red light and flipped their SUV, crushing the life out of his wife, Claire, and stealing the future of their only son, Tyler. Tyler had just turned 6. Now at 9, he sat in a wheelchair in a silent house filled with reminders of what they'd lost. Claire's picture still hung by the stairs. Her favorite mug still sat on the top shelf of the kitchen cabinet, untouched. Like everything else Mark couldn't bring himself to throw out. He had tried everything. The best doctors, clinics across the country, specialists flown in from Europe, custom physical therapy programs, expensive exoskeleton equipment, even neurological treatments that hadn't yet been approved in the States. None of it mattered. The doctors kept saying there was still a chance that Tyler's spinal damage wasn't complete, that it was possible for him to walk again. But they all agreed on one thing. He had to want it. He had to fight. And Tyler didn't fight. He barely spoke. He wouldn't look Mark in the eye anymore. Most days, the boy just stared out the window or sat in front of the TV, unmoving, a remote dangling in his hand like he didn't even notice it was there. Mark felt like he was losing him inch by inch. It had been their family driver, Charles, who suggested they find help in the house. Not a nurse, not another therapist, just someone warm, someone normal. The house feels like a grave, Charles had said, voice low. It needs someone living in it. Mark had snapped at him at first. Then that night, watching his son cry silently while holding his mother's old scarf, he gave in. He didn't post an ad or go through a fancy agency. Instead, he called an old contact at a local church charity that helped place women in domestic roles. The next week, Emily Dawson showed up at the front door with a small suitcase and eyes that had seen their own share of sorrow. Emily was 35. No makeup, no expensive clothes, nothing glamorous. Her brown hair was pulled back into a low ponytail, and she wore comfortable shoes and a plain blue shirt with rolled-up sleeves. She didn't say much. She smiled gently at Mark, nodded when he showed her around, and asked where the laundry room was. When he led her to the back of the house, she paused near the sunroom where Tyler sat alone, his wheelchair turned toward the garden. Emily didn't ask anything. She just looked through the glass door for a long moment before following Mark down the hall. Later that night, after she had unpacked and started a load of laundry, she walked quietly into the kitchen, made herself a cup of tea, and sat silently across from Tyler while he ate his dinner. Tyler didn't look at her. He pushed his food around, barely touched it, then wheeled himself away. Emily didn't force anything. She just watched him go, took his plate, and started rinsing it. For the first few days, it was like she wasn't even there. She cleaned quietly, moved softly, and never tried to insert herself into the boy's space. She didn't ask questions, didn't push conversation, didn't try to cheer anyone up, but she noticed things. She noticed that Tyler didn't like when the living room lights were too bright, so she started using the lamps instead. She noticed he always left one green bean on his plate, so she served him one less. She noticed he frowned when the TV was too loud, so she turned it down before he even had to say anything. Slowly, she started humming while she dusted, songs from the radio, old country ballads. On Thursday morning, she was folding laundry in the living room when she dropped a sock and jokingly asked the dog Max to help her pick it up. She said it in a goofy voice, complete with a wagging finger and a fake scolding tone. Mark was halfway down the stairs when he heard something he hadn't heard in over 2 years. Tyler's laugh. It was short and surprised, and ended as quickly as it came, but it was real. Emily didn't look up or act like it was a big deal. She just said, "See? Even Max agrees it's not his job," and went back to folding. That night, Mark asked Emily what she had said to make Tyler laugh. She blinked at him like she didn't understand the question. "I didn't say anything," she said. "I was just being myself." That answer stayed with him. He had spent 3 years trying to fix his son with plans, money, and strategy. And now, a woman with no degree in therapy, no money, and no magic solution had gotten further in 4 days than he had in years. Emily didn't try to take over. She just kept being there. She started bringing Tyler small things, a comic book with a funny title, a weird snack she found at the store and thought he might like, a rock shaped like a heart from the garden. One afternoon, she rolled a tennis ball across the floor toward him and waited. At first, he just looked at it. Then, slowly, he leaned down, picked it up, and tossed it back. It was barely a throw, more like a clumsy drop. But Emily caught it with dramatic flair and pretended to fall off the couch. Tyler laughed again, then again, the next day. On Sunday, Emily pushed open the patio doors and invited him outside. He said nothing. She walked out, sat on the grass, and just waited. After 10 minutes, he rolled out behind her. She handed him a popsicle and started telling him about the squirrel she saw stealing bird food. No pressure, just stories. The house started to change. Mark noticed it first in the way the rooms felt less heavy, like someone had opened a window and let something fresh in. He started leaving work earlier. He stayed home more. Sometimes he stood in the hallway and watched through the glass while Emily and Tyler sat in the sunroom, talking about nothing important. Tyler started smiling again. It wasn't every day, and it wasn't always bright, but it was there. One afternoon, Mark came home early and froze in the doorway. Tyler was on his feet, wobbly, clinging to Emily's arm, shaking but standing. The boy's face was flushed, and there were tears in his eyes, but he was smiling. A real, wide smile. Emily looked up at Mark, surprised, as if she hadn't expected it either. Mark's heart nearly stopped. He stepped forward, unsure if he was dreaming. Tyler looked at him and whispered, "Look, Dad." Mark dropped his briefcase right there on the floor. Mark had no idea how to raise a child without Claire. She'd always been the warm one, the one who knew what to say, how to calm Tyler when he had nightmares, how to turn something painful into something simple. After she was gone, Mark did what he always did when he didn't know what to do. He worked. Meetings, calls, plans, flights. The more noise he filled his day with, the less time he had to think about that awful night, the screams, the crushed metal, the sound of Claire's last breath in the wreck. But there were no business strategies for grief, and when it came to Tyler, nothing he tried seemed to matter. He paid top dollar to fly in a pediatric neurologist from New York. They said she was one of the best in the country. She examined Tyler, ran tests, reviewed every scan. Her voice was calm when she explained that while the damage to his spine was serious, it wasn't irreversible. There was still a real chance he could regain movement. But when she walked into the living room to talk to Tyler, he didn't even turn his head to look at her. He just sat there, eyes fixed on the floor, shoulders stiff. She tried for over an hour. He didn't speak a word. When she left, she gave Mark a long look and said gently, "This part has to come from him. You can't buy it." Next came the fancy rehab center in Arizona. It had pools, gardens, music therapy, even a room with virtual reality games made just for kids with disabilities. Mark flew Tyler out on a private plane. He stayed in the suite next door, visited him between sessions, but every night, Tyler just sat on the bed staring out the window. The therapist said he showed limited engagement. The only thing he responded to was when they showed him a video of his mother. He burst into tears and shut down completely for the rest of the day. That night, Mark sat outside the rehab center, staring at the stars in the desert sky, feeling more alone than he ever had in his life. Back home, he tried to turn the mansion into a place that would help his son heal. He turned Claire's art studio into a therapy room, bought custom-made equipment from Germany, installed ramps, lifts, even a soft-floor gym in the basement. He brought in a team of private therapists, one by one, each with a different technique. There was Dr. Rivera, who tried play therapy. Tyler ignored him. Then there was Naomi, a kind woman who sang lullabies in Spanish and tried to get Tyler to tap along to music. He covered his ears until she left. The longest anyone lasted was 2 weeks. At one point, Mark even considered hypnotherapy. He was desperate. The therapist showed up with a calm voice and a slow, relaxing tone. Tyler stared at him the entire time without blinking, then turned his chair around and left the room. He didn't speak to anyone for 2 days after that. Mark was running out of options. He started blaming himself, not just for the crash he had been driving, but for everything since. Maybe he wasn't enough. Maybe he couldn't give Tyler what he needed. Sometimes he wondered if the boy blamed him too. Maybe that's why Tyler never looked at him anymore. Maybe every time he saw Mark's face, he remembered the accident. The distance between them wasn't loud. It wasn't screaming or anger. It was quiet, chilling, like a wall that had gone up slowly over time, brick by brick, and Mark couldn't break through it. He tried sitting with him during meals. Tyler didn't respond. He tried reading his favorite childhood books out loud. Tyler would leave the room without saying anything. The only time they were in the same room together was when Mark carried him from his chair to the bed at night. Even then, Tyler kept his eyes closed, pretending to sleep. Once, Mark tried something he hadn't done in a long time. He pulled out an old box from the closet, one filled with family videos, Birthdays, vacations, Claire singing in the kitchen while Tyler danced in his pajamas. He set up a projector in the living room and asked Tyler if he wanted to watch. Tyler didn't answer. Mark turned on the video anyway, hoping the sound of Claire's voice might open something. At first, Tyler just sat still. Then, without a word, he turned the wheelchair around and rolled himself out of the room. Mark didn't stop him. He just watched the screen, watched Claire laughing and holding their son, and felt something inside him collapse. There were nights when Mark sat at the edge of his bed, holding Claire's wedding ring in one hand, asking questions into the dark. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he still spoke to her sometimes, asking her to give him a sign, to help him know what to do. The only answer he ever got was silence. The hardest part wasn't the wheelchair. It wasn't the physical pain, the surgeries, or the therapy bills. It was watching his son disappear, slowly, quietly, like he was slipping away piece by piece. His smile, his laugh, his voice, gone. One morning, Mark found Tyler in the backyard, still in his pajamas, sitting in his chair under the tree that Claire used to read books beneath. The sun was barely up. Tyler was holding one of her scarves in his lap. He wasn't crying. He was just staring into the distance like he wasn't really there. Mark called his name softly. Tyler didn't move. Mark walked closer, crouched down beside him, and placed a hand on his shoulder. For a moment, he thought Tyler might lean into it. Instead, the boy gently pulled away and wheeled himself back toward the house. That day, something broke in Mark. Not in a dramatic way, not in some loud meltdown. It was quieter than that. He just sat on the grass after Tyler left and stared at the tree for almost an hour. He realized then that he had no idea what his son needed anymore. No amount of money or effort had made a difference. It felt like trying to fix a sinking boat by patching holes in the wrong places. Mark didn't talk about it to anyone. He kept showing up, kept making plans, booking appointments, writing checks. But inside, he had started to feel like he was just going through the motions. And maybe that's why, when Charles suggested hiring someone to help around the house, someone kind, someone who could maybe bring warmth back into the home, Mark didn't argue. Not this time. Not because he believed it would fix anything, but because he had run out of ideas. And for the first time, he admitted to himself that he couldn't do this alone. Emily showed up early in the morning. Not super early, but early enough that the sun was still low and the house felt quiet in that heavy way big homes do when nothing's moving inside them. She wore a faded green sweater and jeans that had been washed 100 times. Her shoes weren't shiny or stylish. They were the kind people wear when they know they'll be on their feet all day. She had her brown hair tied back in a way that looked more like habit than fashion. Her suitcase was small. Mark noticed that right away. Just one rolling bag and a canvas tote. Not the kind of luggage you bring when you plan to stay long. More like the kind you bring when you're used to moving around. She smiled when Mark opened the door, but it wasn't a big or fake smile. It was soft, calm, like she didn't expect much from him, but also wasn't nervous. She introduced herself, shook his hand, and said, "You must be Mark. Thank you for having me." Her voice was gentle and clear, like someone who knew how to talk to people without making them uncomfortable. Mark gave her a quick tour of the downstairs, told her the basics: kitchen schedule, laundry system, storage closet. Emily nodded, asked where she could put her things, and that was it. No questions, no chatter. She just got to work. She started in the kitchen. Not scrubbing or deep cleaning, just checking what was there. She looked at what kind of cereal was on the shelf, what was in the fridge, what was expired. She didn't move fast, but she didn't waste time either. She worked like someone who had done this for years. No fuss, no noise, just slow, steady movements. Around mid-morning, Mark passed through the hallway and heard her quietly singing to herself as she wiped down the counters. Not loud enough to bother anyone, just a little tune. Later he realized it was something from the radio, one of those songs that used to play in Claire's car. When Emily finished in the kitchen, she stepped into the hallway and paused outside the sunroom. That's where Tyler was. Same place he always was. The wheelchair was facing the garden, back to the room. He didn't move when she stepped into view. Emily didn't say anything. She stood there for a few seconds, taking in the way the boy's arms rested on the sides of the chair, the way his head tilted just slightly, like he was listening for something but didn't want to look like he was. Then she turned and walked away. She spent the next hour in the laundry room, sorting through piles that had been ignored for days. She folded slowly, carefully, like it mattered. Not because someone was watching, but because it was the kind of work that made her feel useful. Mark passed by her once or twice, and each time she gave him the same soft smile. Not pushing, not too warm, just present. Around lunchtime, she made a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup. Nothing fancy, just regular comfort food. She brought it to the dining table and set it out for Tyler without saying anything. Then she sat down across from him with her own sandwich and started eating. Tyler didn't touch his food. He stared at his plate for a while, then at the window. Emily didn't try to talk. She didn't ask questions or tell him to eat. She just took a bite and chewed slowly, like this was the most normal thing in the world. At one point, the dog, Max, wandered over and sat between them. Emily reached down and scratched behind his ears without breaking the rhythm of her meal. After lunch, she washed the dishes by hand, even though the house had a big, expensive dishwasher. Mark noticed but didn't say anything. She dried each plate and put it away without leaving a trace behind. Then she wiped the sink, hung up the towel, and checked the list of medications on the fridge. She didn't touch anything, just read it. That afternoon, she stepped into the living room and opened the curtains. Sunlight poured in. The room hadn't felt that bright in a long time. Emily walked over to the shelf and picked up a framed photo, one of Claire holding Tyler when he was little. She smiled at it, brushed some dust off the glass, and set it back down in a slightly straighter position. Then she looked around, as if she was memorizing the space, and went back to her folding. At some point, Mark found himself standing at the foot of the stairs just watching her move. She didn't seem to notice, or maybe she did and just didn't mind. She had a way of moving through the house like she belonged there, but not in a loud or demanding way. More like she understood the space and didn't want to disturb it. Later that day, while Mark was in his office on a call, he heard a small sound, barely noticeable, but different. Not music, not crying, just a quick low sound from the hallway. He ended the call early and walked out to see what it was. Emily was kneeling next to Max, talking to him in a silly voice while holding a tennis ball above his nose. "If you catch it this time, I'll let you keep it," she whispered, smiling. Max barked softly and lunged for the ball. It slipped out of her hand and bounced once, landing under the couch. Emily let out a dramatic sigh and said, "Now look what you did, you big goof." What she didn't know was that Tyler had been watching from the edge of the hallway. He didn't say anything, didn't laugh, but he watched, really watched. And when Emily glanced up and saw him there, she didn't react. She didn't wave or smile big or rush over to make it into a moment. She just looked at him, gave a small nod, and turned back to Max. That night, Emily didn't eat dinner in the dining room. She took her plate to the back porch and sat alone with a cup of tea. The sun was low. Mark passed by the window and saw her sitting there, staring out at the trees like she was remembering something far away. He thought about asking her if she needed anything, but didn't. He just stood there for a minute, then walked away. Before going to bed, Emily stepped into the living room again. She straightened the pillows, folded the throw blanket, turned off the lamps, and paused near the photo shelf. This time she picked up a picture of Mark and Tyler at the beach, both of them covered in sand. Claire's hand could be seen in the corner of the frame, reaching in to fix Tyler's hat. Emily smiled, set it down carefully, and whispered, "Good night, kid." She didn't know that Tyler had wheeled himself to the edge of the hallway again, just far enough to see her. He didn't say a word, but something was different in his face. His eyes were a little softer. He watched her turn off the light, heard her footsteps fade down the hallway. Then he sat there in the dark for a long time, thinking about the way she said, "Good night," like she meant it. Emily didn't try to make Tyler talk. She didn't push for anything. That was the first thing Mark noticed. Other people who came into the house always started with too much. Too cheerful, too loud, too full of advice. They acted like if they just said the right words, they could flip a switch in Tyler and make him come back to life. Emily was the opposite. She stayed quiet most of the time. Not silent like she didn't care. Quiet like she was giving everyone space to breathe. Every morning she woke up early and moved through the house like she belonged there, even though she never acted like she did. She made breakfast without asking what anyone wanted. She just cooked. Sometimes pancakes, sometimes eggs and toast, sometimes just warm oatmeal with a little cinnamon. She always made a plate for Tyler and set it on the small table near the sunroom where he liked to sit. She never asked if he wanted it. She just left it there and went on with her day. At first, Tyler didn't touch the food. He just sat in his chair, staring out at the garden like always. But Emily didn't comment. She'd come back later and quietly clear the plate, no questions. Then one day she noticed something. The spoon had moved, just slightly, and the next morning, half the oatmeal was gone. She still didn't say anything, She just smiled to herself and made it again the next day. She started leaving little things around where he could find them. Nothing big. A small rubber ball on the windowsill. A tiny potted plant on the table by his chair. A funny-looking magnet on the fridge shaped like a slice of pizza with googly eyes. She never mentioned them. She just left them there, like surprises he could discover on his own. Most days he ignored them. But once Mark saw Tyler slowly spinning the rubber ball in his hand, just staring at it and not in that blank way he used to, like he was thinking about something. One afternoon, Emily was folding laundry in the living room while Tyler sat nearby, flipping through the channels on the TV but not really watching anything. She didn't talk to him. She just hummed quietly while matching socks and folding shirts into neat little squares. Then she held up a pair of pajama pants that had a rip in the leg and said, These have been through a lot." Tyler glanced at them, then looked away. Emily smiled and added, "I'll fix them. Can't let the best ones go to waste." She didn't wait for a response. She just set them aside and kept folding. Later that week, those same pajama pants showed up in Tyler's laundry basket again. Mark was the one who noticed. He hadn't seen Tyler wear them in over a year. Emily never asked Tyler to come outside, but every day she found some reason to be out there, watering the plants, sweeping the porch, checking the mail slowly like she was waiting for the sun to warm her face. Sometimes she brought Max with her and played little games with him, tossing a stick lazily across the yard or pretending to be upset when he didn't bring it back. She always laughed at the dog's bad behavior like it was the best part of her day. One day, while she was sitting on the porch steps sipping lemonade, she looked up and saw Tyler just inside the door, watching. He didn't say anything. He didn't even realize she saw him, but his chair had moved a few feet closer than usual. Mark asked her once, "How do you get him to be around you like that?" Emily was sitting at the kitchen table peeling an apple with a small knife, smooth and slow. She didn't look up when she answered. "I don't try to get him to do anything," she said. "I just let him know I'm here." That was the thing about Emily. She didn't fill the air with noise. She didn't fill the silences with instructions or plans. She left room for Tyler to feel whatever he needed to feel, and somehow that made him feel safer. She started showing up in little ways that mattered. On cold mornings, she'd bring him a blanket without asking. On rainy days, she'd quietly put his favorite mug near his chair, filled with warm cocoa. He didn't always drink it, but he started looking at it at least. Once, she left a coloring book with markers nearby. Not a childish one with detailed animals and shapes. That night, Mark found a page half-colored. Tyler never admitted it, but it was obvious he'd done it. The colors were off, messy, like his hand was still unsure, but it was something. Another time, Emily was dusting a high shelf and accidentally knocked over a small music box Claire had kept there. It clattered to the floor and the lid popped open, playing a soft melody. Emily froze. Not because she broke it. It was fine. But because she saw Tyler's eyes widen from across the room. He looked stunned, frozen in place. The song had been Claire's favorite lullaby. Emily didn't panic. She slowly walked over, picked it up, closed the lid gently and said, "It's a nice tune. I'll be more careful next time." Then she set it back on the shelf and walked away. No apology, no explanation, just understanding. The next day, she left the music box open on the table. Tyler didn't touch it, but he didn't roll away from it either. There was a moment one evening, small but clear, that said things were starting to shift. Emily had just finished putting away the last of the clean towels and was heading down the hallway when she passed by Tyler's room. The door was half open. She paused for a second, then gently knocked once and peeked in. "Hey," she said softly, "do you want me to leave the nightlight on?" Tyler didn't answer right away. Then, without turning around, he said one word. "Yes." Emily nodded. "Okay. Good night, Tyler." She turned to leave, but just before she stepped away, she heard a whisper so faint she almost thought she imagined it. "Good night." She smiled all the way back to her room. Not the kind of smile you show people, the quiet kind that stays with you. That night, Mark sat in his office pretending to read, but he wasn't. He was thinking about that voice. He hadn't heard his son speak a word to anyone in months. Now, after just a few weeks of soft footsteps and small actions, Tyler had whispered a word that sounded like hope. Emily never celebrated the moment. She didn't mention it the next day. She just made oatmeal and folded laundry and took Max outside, same as always. But now Tyler's eyes followed her more, and when she walked into the room, he didn't wheel away. The day started like any other. The sun came through the windows in patches, lighting up the kitchen in soft spots. Emily was already up making breakfast. She moved around like she always did, calm and steady. Nothing about her said she was in a rush, and nothing about her ever felt fake. Tyler was in the sunroom like usual, his back to the room, watching the trees sway outside. Mark was upstairs going through emails, not really reading them. Another quiet morning. Emily had made banana pancakes. She didn't ask who wanted them. She just placed one plate in the kitchen for herself and another on the table near Tyler, with a fork and a small bottle of syrup. No pressure, just there. After that, she went to the laundry room. That's when it happened. The sound was small at first. Not loud, just one short burst. Like someone accidentally let it slip out. Mark was heading down the stairs when he heard it. He stopped, not sure if he imagined it. Then it happened again. Clear this time. It was laughter. Not loud, not big, but real. And it came from Tyler. Mark froze halfway down the steps, one hand gripping the railing, his breath caught in his chest. For a second, he didn't know what to do. Part of him was scared to move, like he'd scare it off if he got too close. But then he stepped down slowly, his shoes quiet on the steps, and turned the corner toward the hallway. The sound came again. He followed it toward the kitchen. When he peeked around the corner, what he saw didn't make sense right away. Emily was lying flat on the floor next to Max. One arm stretched out like she was pretending to be knocked out. Her hair was a mess. Her shirt twisted like she'd fallen hard, and the tennis ball was sitting a few feet away. Max was wagging his tail like he had no idea what he'd done wrong. Tyler was shaking with silent laughter, his hand covering his mouth, his eyes wide and bright in a way Mark hadn't seen since before the accident. His wheelchair was turned toward them, and for once, he wasn't staring past everything like he didn't care. He was locked in that moment, really there. Emily peeked up from the floor, one eye open, and whispered, "You saw that, didn't you? The dog just tackled me, out of nowhere. It was a full-on ambush." That set Tyler off again. A small giggle at first, then a real laugh that spilled out like he couldn't hold it back anymore. His shoulders lifted, his eyes closed, and for a second, he looked like a completely different kid. Emily sat up, rubbing her elbow with a playful wince. "He's dangerous, we need to put him on house arrest." Tyler let out a snort. Then he clapped a hand over his mouth like he was surprised at himself. Emily didn't make a big deal of it. She didn't say "you laughed" or try to make it a moment. She just picked herself up off the floor, brushed off her pants, and said, "Well, since you're clearly the witness, you're now part of this investigation. I'll need your full report by lunch." Tyler gave her a look that was half smile, half shy, and nodded once. Mark stepped back around the corner before they saw him. His heart was racing. He pressed his back to the wall and closed his eyes. It had been so long, he couldn't even remember the last time he'd heard Tyler make that sound. He wanted to cry or laugh himself, or maybe both, but he didn't move. He stayed there, hidden, like the moment wasn't his to join just yet. Later that morning, Tyler asked for a second pancake. He didn't speak, just pointed at the empty plate and tapped the table twice. Emily brought him another without a word. When she set it down, he looked at her for a second too long, like he was trying to figure something out about her. Mark came into the kitchen a few minutes later and saw both plates sitting on the table, one half eaten, the other gone. He looked at Emily, who was rinsing dishes, and tried to find the right words. All he managed was, "I heard earlier." Emily didn't stop scrubbing. "Yeah," she said quietly. "It just happened." "How?" he asked. She glanced over her shoulder. He thought Max was going to do a trick. Instead, Max ran into me like a bowling ball. I fell, and I think that broke the ice. Mark smiled, but it faded fast. He leaned against the counter and stared at the plate. "He hasn't laughed like that since—" "I know," she said softly. They didn't say anything else for a while. The sound of water running filled the space. Then Emily dried her hands and added, "It'll probably come and go. He's still hurting, but it's in there. His laugh, his smile, it's all still there. Just buried." Mark didn't answer. He just nodded and walked out of the room. But that night, when he came back from his office, he brought home Tyler's favorite snack from years ago. Those caramel corn puffs Claire used to sneak into the grocery cart when Tyler wasn't looking. He left the bag on the table without saying anything. The next day it was gone. That week something small changed between Emily and Tyler. It wasn't loud. He didn't suddenly start talking or hugging anyone, but he watched her more now, followed her with his eyes when she walked into a room. When she spoke, he listened, even if he didn't respond. One time, while she was peeling carrots for dinner, she dropped one and pretended to act like it was a tragedy. "I was just getting to know that carrot," she said sadly. "Now he's gone." Tyler let out a small, short laugh. Not like before, just one sound, but it was real. He even started showing signs of movement, subtle things, shifting his weight in the chair, using his hands more to guide the wheels. He still didn't say much and he didn't ask questions, but it was like a light had been turned on inside him. Not all the way, but just enough to see where the walls were. One afternoon, Emily was reading a book in the sunroom, and Tyler rolled up beside her. He didn't say anything, just sat there. She didn't ask him why. She just offered him a cookie from the small tin on the table between them. He took it. That was it. But in a house where silence had lived for so long, that tiny moment felt louder than anything. Emily had a way of slipping into Tyler's days without making it feel like something was being taken over. She didn't tell him what to do. She just made things feel lighter, easier, like it was okay to breathe again. It started with little stuff. She'd sit beside him while he watched a movie, not even watching it herself, just being there. Sometimes she'd bring a puzzle or a coloring page and work on it quietly next to him. She didn't expect him to join in, but every now and then, he'd glance over. One afternoon, he even pointed at the puzzle piece she couldn't find and nudged it with his finger. She didn't say a word, just fitted in and gave him a tiny nod. It became a thing after that. Sitting together, no pressure, no rules. Mark noticed the change, but he didn't always know what to do with it. He'd walk into the room and see them side by side. Tyler's head tilted toward her like he was actually listening to something, or laughing, just a little, and Mark would stand there for a second, feeling something warm rise up, but also something cold at the same time. It was like watching someone else step into a place that used to be his. He tried. That's the thing. Mark really tried. He started coming home earlier. Instead of hiding in his office until dinner, he'd sit at the table and ask about Tyler's day. Tyler didn't say much back, but he didn't roll away either. That was progress. Mark even tried reading to him again, like he used to before everything fell apart. One night he sat on the edge of the couch and opened one of Tyler's old books. His voice cracked a little at first, but he kept going. Emily was sitting nearby, quietly folding clothes. Tyler didn't say anything, but he stayed in the room until the end of the chapter. The thing is, Emily and Tyler had started to build their own rhythm, their own inside jokes. One time, Emily burned a grilled cheese sandwich and made a huge deal out of it, calling it the great sandwich disaster of the year. Tyler couldn't stop laughing. The next morning when she put toast on his plate, he looked at it and asked in a soft voice, "Is this from the same chef?" It was the first joke he'd made in years. Emily clutched her chest like he'd insulted her honor and said, "I see how it is. No faith in me anymore." They laughed about it all day. Mark saw moments like that and didn't always know where he fit in. He was happy, of course. Seeing Tyler come back to life was more than he ever hoped for. But there were times he felt like an outsider in his own house, like someone watching from the window instead of being part of it. He'd walk in with something he thought Tyler might enjoy, a new video game, a book, a model plane kit, and find that Emily had already brought him something that somehow meant more, a handmade slingshot, a jar of dirt with a worm in it, a little wooden figure she carved herself. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy, but things that made Tyler's eyes light up. Mark didn't say anything for a while, but one night after Tyler had gone to bed, he caught Emily in the kitchen making tea. She turned when she saw him and smiled like she always did. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. What exactly did you do to him?" Emily blinked. "What do you mean?" "My son," Mark said, walking over to the counter. "You've been here a few weeks and he's different. He's better, happier, more alive. He talks, he laughs, he listens. I've spent years trying to pull him out of that place and nothing worked. And now suddenly you walk in and it's like he sees color again." Emily lowered her eyes. "I didn't do anything special." "That's not true," Mark said. "You did something. He trusts you, more than he trusts me." There was a long pause before Emily answered. "He doesn't trust easily, but I think he just needed someone who didn't expect him to be fixed." Mark's jaw tightened. He looked down at the floor. "You think I've been pushing him too hard?" "I think you've been trying to save him," she said gently. "And sometimes that makes it hard to just sit with him." He nodded slowly, his hands tightening around the edge of the counter. "I don't know how to sit still. I don't know how to wait. I just wanted him back." "I know," she said. "I see it." There was nothing harsh in her voice, nothing judgmental, but still, something about it rubbed against Mark's pride. He had built his life around solving problems, being strong, being in control, and here was this woman, someone with no formal training, no big resume, changing everything with her soft words and quiet hands. He didn't say anything else that night, just nodded and walked away. But something inside him stayed tight. The next few days he kept his distance more than before, still polite, still around, but something in his tone changed. He didn't join them in the sunroom. He stopped leaving little surprises for Tyler. Emily felt it too. The way he'd glance at her and then look away. The way he'd leave the room just as she entered. Tyler noticed. One night, while Emily was reading to him, he asked, "Is Dad mad at you?" She hesitated. "No, I think he's just figuring some things out." Tyler nodded slowly, then looked down at his lap. "He used to read to me too." "I know," Emily said softly. "And he still wants to." The boy was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Did you have a son?" Emily's breath caught in her chest. She didn't answer right away, just closed the book gently and set it on the table. "Yeah," she said. "I did. Where is he now?" Emily looked toward the window. "He's not here anymore." Tyler didn't ask anything else. He just looked at her for a while, like he understood something that hadn't been said, and maybe he did. From that night on, something deepened between them. It wasn't louder, it was quieter, but stronger. He started waiting for her in the mornings, rolling himself to the kitchen table before she got there, picking up the spoon before she said anything, watching her with softer eyes. And somewhere down the hall, Mark watched too, from a distance. Vanessa hadn't been to the house in months, not because she didn't care. That's not how she'd explain it anyway. In her mind, she was giving Mark space. He was the type who shut down when things got hard, and she knew better than to push. But deep down, Vanessa didn't come around because she hated seeing what the house had become. The quiet, the wait, the way Tyler wouldn't even meet her eyes anymore. It reminded her too much of the crash, too much of the night she got the phone call and heard her brother's voice shaking for the first time in her life. When she finally showed up again, it was because she'd heard something. Not from Mark. He rarely opened up. It was from Charles, the driver, who she still talked to now and then. "There's a woman working at the house," he said. "A housekeeper. The boy's different now. He's talking more, laughing." That got Vanessa's attention. Fast. She pulled up in her sleek black car, stepped out in heels way too high for the driveway gravel, and made her way to the front door like she still lived there. Her hair was pulled back tight, her sunglasses too big for her face, and she wore a jacket that looked more like it belonged in a boardroom than a family home. But that was Vanessa. Always sharp, always in control, always 5 steps ahead of everyone else. Emily was in the foyer when the doorbell rang. She opened it and saw Vanessa standing there with a stiff smile, like she wasn't sure yet if she was going to be polite or go straight into battle. "Hi," Emily said simply. "You must be the housekeeper," Vanessa replied, not waiting for a response before stepping inside. "I'm Vanessa, Mark's sister." Emily nodded. "Nice to meet you." Vanessa looked her up and down in one quick scan. The plain shirt, the worn sneakers, the soft tone in her voice. Nothing impressive, nothing polished, just ordinary. That already bothered her. "Where's my brother?" Vanessa asked, brushing past Emily and heading straight into the living room like she owned the place. Emily didn't try to stop her. "He's in his office. I can let him know you're here." Vanessa waved a hand. "No need. I'll find him." Mark heard her heels before he saw her. He came out of the office, surprised. "Vanessa? I heard the place came back to life," she said, hugging him with one arm. "Thought I'd see it with my own eyes." He smiled, tired but real. "It's good to see you." They sat in the kitchen, Emily out of sight but close enough to hear the edge creeping into Vanessa's voice as she started asking questions. "So, this woman, Emily, where'd you find her?" Mark glanced toward the hallway. "Someone from the church recommended her. She's not a therapist or anything, just a helper." "She live here?" "She stays in the guest room, yeah." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Alone? In your house? With you and your son?" Mark looked annoyed. "Don't start." "I'm not starting," she said, even though she was. "I'm just asking, because this sounds like the beginning of one of those stories where the lonely widow falls for the sweet stranger and then finds out she's not who she says she is." Mark stood up, heading for the fridge. "You've been watching too much TV." Vanessa leaned forward. "I'm serious. You barely know her. And suddenly Tyler's making progress? That's a good thing." "It is. Of course it is. But doesn't that seem a little fast, a little too perfect?" Mark paused. "She's kind. That's all. Too kind," Vanessa muttered. "I've seen this before. Women like her show up when a man's at his lowest, play the long game, and then what? You're signing over the house to her in 6 months? Mark slammed the fridge door shut. Stop it. I'm protecting you, she said. And your son, by accusing someone who's done nothing wrong. She's not family, Mark. She's a stranger living in your home. Mark's voice was lower now. Tyler smiled because of her. He laughed. He's eating again. Sleeping better. Do you know what that means to me? Vanessa didn't answer right away. She just stared at him, trying to read his face. He looked tired, worn down, but not broken, not like before. And that's what scared her most. Later that day, Vanessa walked into the sunroom without knocking. Tyler was sitting by the window, flipping through a book Emily had given him. A simple one, about animals. He looked up when he saw her, his face guarded. Hey, kiddo, she said, crouching beside him. Long time. Tyler gave her a small nod but didn't speak. She looked at the book. What's that? He showed her the cover. She smiled tight and said, Emily give you that? He nodded again. She's nice, huh? Tyler looked at her, unsure what to say. Then he went back to the book. Vanessa's smile faded. She stood up and walked away, her heels clicking against the floor. She found Emily in the laundry room later, folding towels. Always folding towels. I don't mean to be rude, Vanessa said, standing in the doorway, arms crossed. But I like to know who's around my family. Emily looked up. That's fair. So tell me, Vanessa continued, why are you really here? Emily didn't blink. To help. Vanessa tilted her head. Just helping? No other reason? No personal connection? No plan to stay? I don't make plans like that, Emily said. I stay where I'm needed. Vanessa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Well, we'll see how long that lasts. Emily said nothing. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Vanessa sat in the guest room with her phone, scrolling through search results. She typed in Emily Dawson background check. Then, more slowly, Emily Dawson plus arrest and Emily Dawson plus fired. She didn't find anything right away, but that didn't mean she stopped looking. Emily didn't come into the house with a medical plan. She wasn't a physical therapist and she didn't pretend to be, but she paid attention. She noticed every little movement Tyler made, how he shifted when something was uncomfortable, how his fingers moved when he was thinking, how sometimes he'd reach out for something without even realizing it. She watched how long it took him to pick up a fork or turn a page, and she remembered the exact moment he stopped avoiding using his arms. That was enough for her to try something. It started with a rolled-up pair of socks. One afternoon, while Tyler was sitting in the sunroom, Emily sat down across from him with a laundry basket and tossed the soft sock ball into his lap. He looked down at it, then at her. Just toss it back, she said casually. No points, no rules. Just catch and throw. He hesitated. His hands hovered like he was still thinking about it. Then slowly, he picked up the ball and gave it a weak toss. It barely reached her. It landed near her feet. Emily clapped once. Good enough. My turn. She scooped it up and lobbed it back, just a little higher this time. And that's how it started. Nothing formal. Just a game between two people sitting across from each other with a ball made of socks and no pressure. They played for 10 minutes, then 15. Tyler didn't laugh or talk much, but he was in it. He missed a few, then started aiming better. Emily would exaggerate her reactions every time he threw a good one, pretending it hit her in the face or rolling over in slow motion like he'd knocked her out. Tyler didn't smile wide, but a tiny grin showed up once or twice. The next day, there was a balloon on the table. Emily handed it to him without saying anything. He raised an eyebrow, and she pointed to the ceiling. Keep it in the air, she said. That's the only rule. They batted it back and forth, sometimes slow, sometimes fast, and when it popped against a picture frame, Tyler actually jumped from surprise. Emily handed him another one from her pocket. Round 2. That game lasted all week. By Friday, Tyler was using both hands and leaning forward in his chair without thinking about it. He even slapped the balloon hard once and shouted, "Yes!" when it bounced high off the ceiling. Emily just laughed and said, "I knew you were holding back." It became a routine. After breakfast, she'd bring out something new. Scarves for him to wave around in patterns. A long wooden spoon she called the Sword of Destiny, which he used to knock down plastic cups stacked across the room. One day, she brought out a fishing pole she'd modified, with a magnet at the end, and placed small metal fish on the floor around him. "Reel them in," she said, "but you can't bend down. Use your aim." Tyler got serious about it fast. He missed the first few, then figured out the angle. By the end of the game, he had caught 7 of the 10, and when she clapped and said, "That's better than I could do," he gave her a look that almost said, "I know." Emily never told him it was therapy. She never used that word. To him, it was just fun, something different, something that made the days pass without being heavy. But Mark noticed the small changes, the way Tyler moved his arms more, adjusted his seat, even reached for things without help. And Vanessa noticed too. She was always there lately, sitting in the background, pretending to read, pretending to scroll through her phone, but her eyes were always on Emily, watching the way she smiled when Tyler made a good throw, watching the way her hand hovered behind his back when he leaned forward, not touching him, just close enough in case he needed it. One morning, while Emily was guiding Tyler through a game where he had to roll small balls into color-coded cups, Vanessa walked past the doorway, stopped, and leaned just far enough to listen. "Red goes here," Emily said softly, tapping the first cup. "Blue here, green in the last one. Think you can beat my score?" Tyler raised his eyebrows. "You have a score?" Emily grinned. "I always have a score." He rolled the first ball. It missed. Vanessa watched Tyler roll again. This time he leaned forward more than he had before. His fingers were steadier. The ball went straight into the red cup. He smiled, quick and proud. Vanessa's arms crossed tighter across her chest. Later that day, she cornered Mark in his office. "She's doing something with him." Mark looked up from his laptop. "She's helping. She's training him. Like she's testing him for something." Mark frowned. "Vanessa, stop." "No, seriously. I saw them. She's got him playing games with rules and goals. She's pushing him." Mark leaned back in his chair. "She's encouraging him. You don't find it strange? That she's so involved? That she's suddenly the only one he responds to?" Mark was tired of this. "He trusts her. That's not a crime. You don't know anything about her. She's been here for weeks. If she was dangerous, don't you think something would have happened by now?" Vanessa stepped closer. "She's not dangerous. She's smart. Too smart. She knows exactly what she's doing. Look, I'm not saying she's here to hurt anyone, but maybe she's here for something else, something she hasn't told you yet." Mark shook his head. "You're being paranoid." Vanessa didn't reply. She just stared at him, long and hard. That night, while Emily was brushing cookie crumbs off the counter and humming quietly to herself, Vanessa stood by the kitchen doorway, arms folded. "You're getting close to him," she said. Emily turned, surprised. "Tyler? And Mark?" Emily didn't answer. Vanessa stepped in. "Just be careful. People who come into this house thinking they're going to save it usually end up leaving disappointed." "I'm not trying to save anything," Emily said calmly. "I'm just trying to be useful." Vanessa looked at her for a moment longer, then smiled, tight and sharp. "We'll see." She walked away, leaving Emily alone in the quiet kitchen. Emily didn't say anything, but she stood there for a long time staring at the counter, her fingers pressed lightly against the edge like they were holding something back. Vanessa didn't believe in waiting around. If she had a feeling about someone, she acted on it. And she had a feeling about Emily. It had started the moment she stepped into the house and saw the way Tyler looked at her, the way Mark talked about her, like she was the answer to everything. That's what made Vanessa uncomfortable. Nothing was ever that clean, that simple, that good. People like Emily, quiet, helpful, gentle, they were always hiding something. The first thing Vanessa did was start small. Not arguments, not yelling, just little seeds planted here and there. Quiet comments when Mark was distracted. Questions that didn't sound like accusations but left just enough space to grow. "You ever wonder where she came from?" she asked one morning while Mark stood in the kitchen pouring coffee. "I mean, who recommends someone like that without a full background check?" Mark didn't even look up. "She came from a church program. They've known her for years." Vanessa raised her eyebrows. "Churches don't do background checks. Anyone can walk in off the street and say the right words." Mark sighed. "Not this again." "I'm just saying," she added, pouring herself water. "A woman shows up out of nowhere, gets your son to laugh again, and suddenly everyone trusts her like she's family. It's a little fast." Mark didn't argue, but he didn't defend Emily either, and that was enough for Vanessa to keep going. The next day, while Mark was in his office and Emily was outside with Tyler playing a slow game of balloon volleyball on the back patio, Vanessa took a walk through the house. She wasn't snooping. Not exactly. Just observing. She passed by the laundry room and saw a folded sweater on the counter. Soft, old, with a name tag stitched inside. She leaned in, read the label. Property of St. Catherine's Home for Children. Her eyes narrowed. Later that night, she brought it up casually over dinner. "You know," she said, her voice light, "I found a tag on one of her sweaters, from a children's home." Mark looked up from his plate. "What do you mean?" "She used to live in one. That's what it means, right? Or maybe she worked there. Either way, you'd think she'd mention something like that." Mark frowned. "I don't see why that matters." Vanessa shrugged. "It's just strange. A detail like that makes you wonder what else she hasn't said." Emily came into the dining room just then, setting down a dish of sliced fruit. She didn't catch the full conversation, but she caught the quiet between them, the way Mark looked at his sister, the way Vanessa smiled at her like nothing had happened. "Fruit salad?" Emily offered. Vanessa smiled. "Perfect. Thank you." She didn't eat any. The next move was more direct. Vanessa called an old friend, someone who worked at a local private school, and asked a favor. "I need someone to look into a woman named Emily Dawson," she said. "Used to work in home care, maybe as a nurse, possibly connected to a children's facility. I just want to know what's out there. Nothing illegal. Just, background." 2 days later, a message came back. Nothing official, but she used to be a nurse, left suddenly. Something happened at a hospital she worked in, but there was no public report, just word-of-mouth stuff. That was enough for Vanessa. She printed out the email, folded it, and slipped it into a drawer in her guest room. She wasn't ready to show Mark yet, not until she had more, but it confirmed what she already believed. Emily had a story she wasn't telling. Vanessa didn't wait for more facts. She used what she had. The next morning, while Emily was making breakfast and Tyler was still asleep, Vanessa sat with Mark at the kitchen table. "I found something," she said, sliding her phone across the table. "A friend of mine looked into her. She left her last nursing job suddenly. Nobody knows why. They say something went wrong." Mark picked up the phone, read the short message on the screen, then set it down slowly. "That doesn't prove anything," he said. "It doesn't have to. It's a pattern. She disappears, shows up somewhere new, doesn't talk about her past. Mark, come on, you've been so desperate to fix things that you're letting your guard down." He didn't respond. "She could be dangerous," Vanessa pushed. "She could be hiding something serious. She could have done something to a patient. What if she snapped? What if she's using you to cover it up?" Mark's voice was tired when he answered. "She hasn't hurt anyone. That you know of." He stood up. "Enough." But Vanessa wasn't done. That night, while Emily was reading with Tyler in the sunroom, Vanessa sat down with Mark in the living room and changed her tone completely. "I'm not trying to ruin this," she said. "I want what's best for Tyler. That's why I'm here. But this woman, she came out of nowhere. You barely know her. And now she's in your house, close to your son, living here like she belongs. That's not normal." Mark stared at the wall for a long time before answering. "She's helped him more than anyone." "But what if it's not real?" Vanessa said. "What if it's all part of something else?" There was silence between them. In the other room, Tyler let out a soft laugh. Mark looked in that direction. Something shifted in his face, something unsure. Vanessa noticed it. She stood up, walked over, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm just saying," she whispered. "Be careful." It was one of those late mornings when the sky looked like it couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or stay sunny. The house felt quiet, but not heavy like it used to. Just calm. Mark was out at a meeting, trying to push through a pitch he didn't really care about. Vanessa was upstairs on her laptop, clicking away like she had something important to do. Downstairs, in the sunroom, Emily and Tyler were sitting on the floor. They'd started doing that more often, moving from the couch to the rug, working their way closer to the parts of the room that used to feel too far for him. The transition had been slow. It started with Emily encouraging him to sit with his legs stretched out, then shifting his weight from side to side, building small muscles again, letting his body remember things it hadn't done in years. That morning, Emily had placed 2 big couch cushions on either side of him. The wheelchair sat just behind him, close enough in case he needed it. Tyler looked nervous, not scared, just unsure. She was kneeling in front of him, one hand on the floor, one lightly on his shoulder. "All we're doing," she said quietly, "is seeing what happens when you push through your heels. That's it." He nodded barely. Emily didn't say anything else. She knew not to talk too much when he was concentrating. Tyler shifted his weight forward, his hands planted on the carpet. His arms shook a little. He paused. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded again. She moved one of the cushions aside and placed her hands gently under his arms. "I've got you," she said. He pushed again. this time harder. His face tightened, lips pressed together. His legs moved, but not like before. His knees bent, heels dug in, and slowly, with all his effort, his body began to lift. Not all the way, not even close to standing tall, but enough. His knees locked in a wobble. His arms stayed tight at his sides. Emily kept her hands under his arms, steady but not holding him up. She let him do the work, and he did, for about 4 seconds. Then he dropped back down to the floor, hard. Emily flinched but didn't panic. She leaned down close and said, "You did it." Tyler looked at her like he wasn't sure what she meant. "You were up," she said, smiling. "You were standing. That counts." He blinked fast. His face was red, not from crying, just from the effort. He wasn't breathing evenly yet. "I want to try again," he whispered. Emily nodded. So they did it again. This time he stayed up for 5 seconds. He sat back down slower. His hands trembled, but he didn't look away from her. Behind them, near the hallway, Mark had just come in through the side door. He dropped his keys into the dish like he always did, walked past the stairs and stopped. He wasn't expecting anything. He thought maybe Tyler would be watching TV or reading. What he saw instead pulled the air right out of his lungs. There was his son, on his feet, bent at the knees, shaking, holding Emily's arms like they were the only thing keeping him from falling, but standing. Mark stepped into the room, stunned. Tyler saw him. His eyes flicked toward the door. Mark's voice cracked. "Tyler!" That broke his focus. His legs gave out and he dropped hard onto the rug again. Emily caught part of the fall, helping him land gently. Tyler let out a small breath of frustration, leaning back on his hands. Mark rushed in. "Is he okay?" "He's fine," Emily said, helping Tyler sit up. "I stood," Tyler said suddenly. Mark froze. "I stood, Dad," he repeated, more confident this time. "I was up." Mark's mouth opened but no sound came out. He just knelt next to them and looked at Tyler like he'd never seen him before. You really did," he said. Tyler smiled. Barely, but it was real. Mark looked at Emily. "How long has this been going on?" Emily didn't answer right away. "Today's the first real time." Mark turned to Tyler. "How did it feel?" Tyler paused. "Weird, hard, but not bad." Mark sat back, blinking fast. "I want to do it again," Tyler said. Emily looked at him proud. "Let's rest a little first." Mark stood up and walked to the window. He couldn't sit still. He rubbed his hands over his face and took a deep breath. It wasn't just shock, it was everything. The years of silence. The therapists, the waiting, the helplessness, all of it crashing into this one moment. His boy had stood, on his own legs, but then something else crept in. A quieter feeling. Guilt. Not because Tyler stood, but because he hadn't been the one helping him do it. Emily stayed with Tyler as he stretched out his legs, rubbing the tops of his knees slowly. His breathing evened out. She was calm, steady, like she'd done this before. She looked up at Mark once, met his eyes, and gave him a soft, almost hesitant smile. He nodded back, but something in him had shifted. Upstairs on the second floor, Vanessa had seen the whole thing. She'd been walking past the hallway when she heard voices. The kind of voices that said something big was happening. So she stopped, stepped back, and watched from the top of the stairs, hidden just out of sight. She didn't smile. She didn't move. She just stood there watching the three of them on the floor. The way Emily's hand stayed on Tyler's shoulder. The way Mark looked like he didn't know whether to hug his son or fall apart. And most of all, she watched how Tyler kept glancing back at Emily, like he needed to see her face to know he was okay. Vanessa turned and went back to her room. Quiet. She sat down, pulled out the folder where she kept her notes and background searches, and opened it slowly. This wasn't going to be as simple as she thought. It was the kind of dinner invitation that came out of nowhere. Simple words, no build-up. Mark walked into the kitchen while Emily was drying dishes, leaned on the counter and said, "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow night?" She turned her head, surprised. "Just me?" He smiled a little. "Yeah, just you. Not formal or anything. I want to say thank you for everything." Emily looked down at the plate in her hand, then back up at him. "Okay." He nodded and left it at that. No long explanation. Just the two of them sitting down to eat like two people who'd lived in the same house for weeks, but hadn't really sat across from each other like that yet. The next evening, Mark set the table himself. He used the nice plates, the ones Claire used to bring out on holidays. He didn't go overboard, just made a steak dinner with roasted vegetables and a bottle of wine he hadn't touched in over a year. The house felt different. Quieter, but not in a sad way, like it was holding its breath. Tyler was fine with it. When Mark told him Emily was going to have dinner with him alone that night, he just nodded and said, "She deserves it." That one sentence was all the blessing Mark needed. Emily came downstairs wearing the same clothes she always wore. Nothing fancy, just clean and simple. She looked unsure at first, like maybe this wasn't a good idea, but Mark smiled at her and pulled out the chair. "You didn't have to cook," she said. "I wanted to," he replied. "I forgot what it felt like to do something for someone just to do it." They ate slowly, talked about normal things at first. Music, the garden, Max and his weird habit of barking at the same tree every afternoon. Then the conversation drifted to Tyler. Naturally. "He stood," Mark said quietly, still not quite believing it. "He wanted to," Emily replied. Mark looked at her for a long time before speaking again. "You know, I spent years throwing money at doctors and clinics trying to fix something that couldn't be forced. And then you walk in, no big speeches, no promises, and he just started coming back." Emily looked down. "It wasn't me. It was him. He was ready." Mark's voice dropped a little. "But you were the only one he let near enough to find that out." There was a pause between them. Not uncomfortable, just full, like both of them were feeling something bigger than what they were saying. "You've been good for this house," Mark said. Emily smiled softly. "It's been good for me too." The moment could have gone deeper, but it was cut short by the sound of footsteps. Vanessa appeared in the hallway, arms folded, face unreadable. She wasn't dressed up like usual, just jeans and a sweater, but the look in her eyes said this wasn't a casual visit. "Sorry," she said, though she didn't sound sorry. "Didn't realize this was a date." Emily stood up slightly, unsure what to say. "It's not," Mark said quickly. "Just dinner." Vanessa gave a tight smile. "Of course." She didn't say anything else, just turned and walked away. But Emily could tell. It wasn't over. After the meal, while Mark went to check on Tyler, Emily stepped out to the back patio for a breath of air. She didn't hear Vanessa behind her until she spoke. "You're good at this." Emily turned around slowly. "At what?" "The quiet kindness, the calm voice, the little games with my nephew, making yourself part of the house without ever pushing." Emily stayed still. "I'm just doing what I can." Vanessa stepped closer. "Yeah, but the question is why?" Emily didn't answer. Vanessa crossed her arms. "You've been hiding something. I know it. You flinch at certain words. You pause before answering personal questions. You don't talk about your past unless someone pulls it out of you." Emily looked away. Vanessa kept going. "I found your name in some hospital records. St. Luke's. You left your job suddenly. No explanation. There's no story in the news, no complaint filed, just a quiet disappearance. Then you show up here in a rich man's house, caring for his son like it's your second chance." Emily's jaw tightened. "So what happened?" Vanessa asked. "Why'd you really leave that hospital?" Emily finally spoke. "That's none of your business." Vanessa smiled. "It is, if you're living in this house, around my family, around a boy who's already been through enough." Emily's voice was calm, but her eyes were full. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." Vanessa didn't back down. "But you're not here by accident either. So which is it? Are you running from something, or are you trying to fix something you broke?" Emily's breath hitched just once. A small crack in the mask. Vanessa caught it. "Thought so." Emily didn't say a word. She just turned and went back inside. Vanessa stayed on the patio, watching the trees sway in the dark. Her arms stayed crossed, but her face didn't look smug. Not really. It looked tense, like even she wasn't sure how far she was willing to push this. Back inside, Emily walked straight to her room, shut the door quietly, and sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands were shaking. She pressed her palms into her thighs to stop them. Across the room, on the nightstand, was a small photo, worn edges, faded color. It showed a boy, maybe 6, standing next to a woman with the same quiet smile Emily wore now. The boy was holding a paper airplane in one hand. Behind them was a hospital parking lot. Emily stared at the picture for a long time before turning off the lamp. Emily didn't sleep that night. She laid in bed with the covers pulled up to her chest, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like it could answer all the questions sitting heavy in her chest. The conversation with Vanessa kept looping in her mind, those words digging into places she hadn't touched in years. She'd told herself for a long time that the past was the past, but now it was walking toward her again, faster than she could back away. Just before sunrise, she slipped out of bed and opened the drawer where she kept the envelope. It was one of those thick, worn paper envelopes with the kind of stuff you never wanted anyone else to see. Inside were folded documents, a faded photo, and a discharge letter from St. Luke's Hospital. She hadn't looked at it in months, maybe longer, but this time she pulled it out like she already knew what was coming. The paper still smelled faintly like old ink and coffee. That's how most of those late nights at the hospital smelled. Paperwork, bitter coffee, and the ache of fluorescent lights overhead. She ran her finger over the signature at the bottom of the page. It was signed by a man named Dr. Howard Lasky. She hadn't spoken his name out loud since the day she walked out of that place. The memory hit her hard, standing in his office, shaking, voice cracking, trying to explain that it wasn't her fault, that she followed procedure, that she didn't leave the child alone for more than 5 minutes. But none of it mattered. The kid had a reaction, and the parents needed someone to blame. The hospital didn't want a lawsuit, so they let her go quietly. No media, no reports. Just a simple, amicable departure and a pat on the back that felt more like a slap in the face. What nobody knew, not even the hospital, was that the little boy who'd been on her floor that night wasn't just a patient. He was her son. Nobody knew because she'd signed away her rights at birth. She was 19 when she had him. The father, Daniel, said he wasn't ready to be a dad. She was scared. Her family was already gone, so she gave him up to a closed adoption. She told herself it was better that way. She hadn't seen him since, until one random spring night, 8 years later, when she walked into work and saw his name on the chart. Owen, brown hair, allergy to penicillin, age 8. She knew it was him right away. She didn't tell anyone, of course, she just did her job. She watched over him like a ghost. He didn't know her. He never would. But she checked on him more than the other nurses. She made sure his blankets were tucked right. She remembered his favorite flavor of applesauce. Then came the allergic reaction. It wasn't from anything she gave him. It came from a new prescription that another nurse had approved. But Emily was the one on shift when it happened. She found him struggling to breathe, hit the call button, got help fast. He recovered. But the parents flipped. The hospital didn't want heat, so they asked her to resign. Quietly, respectfully.
"Let's not make a mess of this," the head nurse had said, as if her whole world hadn't just been ripped open for the second time. Daniel showed up after the incident. Not for her, for Owen. Emily watched him through the glass. Same smile, same lies, probably. She knew Daniel, knew how charming he could be, how good he was at pretending. But she also knew he'd disappear again, just like he always did. That was the last time she saw them. After that, Emily left town. She didn't know where she was going, just packed up, disappeared, and tried to start over. She took smaller jobs, cleaning houses, caregiving, house-sitting for people who didn't ask too many questions. That's how she found the church program. That's how she found Mark. A soft knock on her door pulled her back to the present. It was Tyler. She opened the door slowly. He was in his wheelchair, holding a small notebook in his lap. His hair was messy, and he looked like he'd just gotten out of bed, but his eyes were wide open and serious. "Are you okay?" he asked. She blinked. "Why wouldn't I be?" He hesitated. "Because you were crying this morning. I saw your eyes." Emily didn't lie. She knelt beside him and said, "Some memories are just hard." He looked at her for a second, then held out the notebook. "You forgot this." She took it gently. It was a simple sketch pad they used sometimes to play drawing games. Inside was a half-finished drawing of a dog wearing sunglasses. Emily had started it days ago, and Tyler had added the tail. She smiled. "Thanks, buddy." Tyler didn't move. "Is someone hurting you?" The question caught her off guard. "No, not now." "Is it about Vanessa?" Emily gave a soft laugh. "She's just worried. She doesn't trust easily." "Neither do I," Tyler said. "But I trust you." Those words hit her hard. She reached out and rested her hand on his. "That means more than you know." Later that day, while Emily was out with Max in the garden, Vanessa saw the envelope sitting on the edge of her nightstand. She didn't touch it, just stared at it. She could have opened it. She wanted to, but something in her paused. Maybe it was the look on Emily's face the night before. Maybe it was the way Tyler had smiled when she was around, but Vanessa didn't trust her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That night, Emily sat on her bed again and stared at the old photo of Owen. The boy in the picture looked nothing like Tyler, but something about the way they smiled when they really smiled felt the same. She slid the picture back into the envelope and placed it in the drawer again. Then she sat in the dark, hands clasped together, trying to remember the last time she felt like she wasn't holding a secret. It started small. the kind of thing that most people wouldn't even notice. One morning, Mark came into Tyler's room to help him get dressed like he'd done 100 times before. But Tyler was already halfway through pulling his shirt over his head. Mark smiled and stepped in. Need help with the rest? Tyler hesitated, then looked toward the door. Is Emily downstairs? Yeah, Mark said, pausing. She's in the kitchen. Tyler gave a quick nod. Can she come in? Mark stood there for a second, not sure how to take that. I just like when she helps me, Tyler added, not trying to be rude, just being honest. Mark nodded slowly. I'll go get her. He walked out without showing anything on his face, but inside something shifted. He told himself it was fine. Of course, Tyler felt comfortable with Emily. She'd been there every day, helping, sitting with him, doing little things that built trust. But still, something about the way Tyler looked past him, waiting for her instead, left a small bruise. That wasn't the only time. A few days later, Tyler was watching a movie in the living room, one of those old animated ones he used to love when he was younger. Mark walked in with a bowl of popcorn and sat on the edge of the couch. Thought I'd watch with you, he said. Tyler smiled politely, but after a few minutes he looked over and asked, Is Emily busy? Mark tried to keep his voice light. Not sure. Why? I wanted to show her the funny part. Mark handed him the remote. You can rewind it. I'll watch it. But Tyler didn't press play. He just held the remote in his lap and waited until Emily walked past the hallway with Max. Then his face lit up. Emily, come watch this. She poked her head in. What is it? He pointed to the screen. The pelican part. You'll laugh. Mark leaned back, silent, as the two of them watched together. Tyler laughed like he used to, full and easy. Emily covered her mouth and played along. They had something that didn't need explaining. And Mark, for the first time in a long time, felt like the outsider. At dinner that night, Tyler told Emily a story about a dream he had. A silly one about flying jelly beans and talking trees. Emily laughed and asked questions. Mark joined in halfway through, but Tyler barely looked at him. His eyes kept bouncing between his plate and Emily, like she was the one who made his world feel real again. Later, after Tyler had gone to bed, Mark stayed in the kitchen, staring into the sink, not doing anything. Emily walked in quietly. You okay? He didn't look at her. Yeah. She stepped closer, grabbed a clean towel, and started drying a dish just to keep her hands busy. Tyler's doing better. Mark nodded. He's doing great. Silence hung between them. Emily set the dish down. You're a good dad. Mark let out a soft laugh, but there was no humor in it. I don't feel like one lately. Emily turned toward him. Why? He finally looked at her. Because I can't get through to him the way you can. Because he calls for you now. Because when he's hurt or excited or scared, he asks for you. He trusts you too, she said. Mark shook his head. Not like that. I know you don't mean to take my place, but sometimes it feels like you already have. Emily's eyes softened. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I know, he said quickly. You're not doing anything wrong. That's the worst part. You're doing everything right. And I'm grateful. But it's still hard. Emily didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, I think maybe Tyler's finally allowing himself to feel safe again. And that's not about replacing you. It's about adding space. Mark looked down. Well, that's hard to hear too. She took a slow breath. You've been carrying everything on your own. I can't imagine how heavy that's been. It's not about me, he said. Maybe it should be just a little, she replied. You lost your wife. You almost lost your son. And now when things are finally getting better, it's okay to admit that some parts still hurt. Mark's eyes dropped. I just miss when he looked at me like I was enough. Emily didn't speak after that. She reached over and lightly placed her hand on his, just for a second, then pulled away. Upstairs, Tyler wasn't asleep yet. He sat in bed with the covers bunched around his legs, staring at the ceiling. Something was bugging him. Not anything painful, just a strange little feeling in his chest, like something had changed downstairs between the two people he cared about most. He rolled over, hugged the pillow close, and whispered, I hope it's not my fault. The next morning, Tyler was quieter than usual. Not distant, just thinking. When Mark came into the room to say good morning, he smiled and said hi, but didn't reach out like he sometimes did. When Emily brought him breakfast, he ate slowly, then pushed the tray away. You okay? She asked. Did you and my dad fight? He asked, eyes on the tray. Emily blinked. No, we just talked. You seemed sad last night, he said. She sat down beside him. Sometimes grown-ups get their feelings all tangled up. Doesn't mean anyone's mad. He thought about that for a moment. You should talk to him again. Make sure. I will, she promised. But later that day, when she passed Mark in the hallway, all they exchanged was a quiet nod. And Tyler noticed. He didn't know how to fix it. He didn't even know exactly what it was. but it felt like something between them had shifted, and even though he didn't mean to cause it, he couldn't stop thinking that maybe he had. Vanessa waited until the timing was just right. She didn't do it during a fight or after an argument. She waited for a calm morning when everything in the house felt quiet and normal. Tyler was out in the garden with Emily and Max, dragging a little rake through the soil, pretending he knew something about planting. Mark had just finished his second cup of coffee and was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a legal document for work. The moment felt still. That's exactly why she picked it. She came into the room holding a folder. "Can we talk?" she said, not sitting yet. Mark looked up. "What's going on?" She set the folder on the table and slid it toward him. "I didn't want to do this. I really didn't. But I've been watching, and something's not right. I need you to look at this. And I need you to be honest with yourself." Mark stared at it for a second. "What is it?" "Chords," Vanessa said. "Things I asked someone to dig up for me. I know I pushed before, and you asked me to back off. I did, but I couldn't let this go. Not with Tyler involved." Mark opened the folder. Inside were printed pages. Some looked like medical forms, others like internal hospital memos. One had a headline clipped from what looked like a local blog. "Nurse under investigation. After incident with child patient." The details underneath were blurry, generic, but enough to make your stomach tighten. It didn't mention Emily by full name, but there were just enough hints to connect the dots, if you were looking for them. Mark flipped to another page. A statement written by someone claiming to be a former co-worker. The words were cold, flat. She was kind, but always emotional. She got too close to the patient. We all knew something was off. After the incident, she disappeared. Mark's heart sank a little. He turned the next page. A scanned image of what looked like an HR report, with Emily's name typed neatly at the top, and a line halfway down that read termination suggested for emotional instability. He looked up at Vanessa. "Where'd you get this?" "A friend of a friend," she said. "It took some digging, and I know what you're going to say. Anyone can write anything. But, Mark, come on. You felt it. The way she avoids questions. The way she freezes when anyone mentions hospitals. This isn't made up. Even if it's not official, it lines up with everything." Mark stared at the folder. "She's dangerous," Vanessa said, voice low now. "Not in the obvious way. Not violent, but unstable. She latches onto broken people, to families who are hurting. She makes herself essential. Then something happens, and she leaves." Mark's jaw tightened. This could be fake. "But is it?" she asked. "You tell me. You've had doubts." "I've seen it." He didn't respond. He was still looking at the papers, but not reading anymore. Vanessa stepped closer. "I know you want to believe the best in people. I know what this woman has meant to Tyler. But what if she snaps? What if she already did, and you're just the next story?" He shook his head. "She hasn't done anything wrong since she's been here, that you know of." Mark pushed the folder back and stood up. "I need time." Vanessa didn't follow him. She let him walk out of the room, knowing she'd said enough for now. The damage was already done. Outside, Emily was laughing at something Tyler said. She was holding a small watering can, and Max was chasing bees around like he had a job to do. Tyler was sitting in the grass, legs stretched out, holding a seed packet, and pretending he could read the instructions. When Mark came out onto the patio, Emily turned to him with her usual soft smile. "Hey," she said, "look who's getting his hands dirty today." Mark smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Tyler looked up. "We're planting peppers." Emily raised an eyebrow. "I said carrots." "He thinks he's sneaky." Mark nodded slowly. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Emily's smile faded just a little. "Sure." Tyler watched them walk away, something in his face changing. He felt it, the shift, the tension, like a cold wind blowing in. Emily followed Mark around the corner of the patio, near the side yard where no one could hear them. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't answer at first. He looked at her like he was trying to line up two different versions of her in his mind, the one who helped his son stand, and the one from the folder. "I need to ask you something," he said finally, "and I need you to be completely honest with me." Emily straightened. "Okay, why did you really leave your last job?" She blinked. The words hit like a slap. He didn't raise his voice. He wasn't angry, just tired, worn. "I didn't go digging," he added, "but Vanessa did. And she brought me something, records, a story, a report." Emily didn't ask to see it. She didn't argue. She looked down at her hands. "I knew this would come up. So tell me," he said, quieter now. "Tell me before someone else tells me who you are." She looked up, eyes full but steady. "I'll tell you everything." But her voice cracked at the end. Then she turned and walked away, slow and shaky, like she was carrying something too heavy. Mark stayed where he was, his hands in his pockets, the warmth of the sun doing nothing to stop the chill inside him. Inside the house, Vanessa was watching through the window. Her arms were crossed, her lips tight, and Tyler, sitting out on the grass, held the unopened seed packet in his lap and stared toward the patio, not moving. He didn't know what had been said, but whatever it was, it had changed something again, and he hated it. Emily packed her bag quietly. She didn't rush, and she didn't drag it out either. She folded her clothes the way she always did. Neat, simple, one piece at a time. Her toothbrush went in a zip pouch, her shoes in a plastic bag. Her sweater, the one with the stitched name tag inside, she folded last. She sat on the edge of the bed after she zipped the suitcase shut. Just sat there, still, one hand on the handle, one hand in her lap. She didn't cry. Not yet. Downstairs, Mark was standing by the front door, arms crossed, heart pounding. He had told himself it was the right decision. Not because he believed everything in that folder, but because once the doubt was in his head, it didn't go away. He needed time to think. That's what he told her. That's what he told himself. But what he didn't say out loud was that the moment she agreed to leave without a fight, a part of him wanted to run upstairs and stop her. But he didn't. Tyler hadn't been told yet. He was in the living room drawing. That's what he did when he was trying to block out whatever strange feeling was hanging in the air. He could feel it. He didn't need anyone to explain it to him. He knew something was wrong. Emily came down the stairs with her bag rolling behind her. Max followed her, confused, tail low, whining under his breath like he knew she was leaving but didn't understand why. Mark stepped forward. "Let me call a car." "I already ordered one," she said softly. He nodded. She glanced toward the living room. "Does he know?" Mark shook his head. "I didn't know how to tell him." Emily looked toward the hallway for a long second. "I have to." Before Mark could say anything, she walked. Tyler looked up when she entered the room. The pencil dropped from his hand. "Hey," Emily said. He stared at her suitcase, then at her face. "Where are you going?" "I have to leave, sweetie." "Why?" Emily crouched in front of him. "Because your dad and I need space to figure some things out." His whole body stiffened. "Did I do something?" "No," she said quickly. "This isn't about you. You said you'd stay," he whispered. Her eyes burned. She tried to smile, but it didn't hold. "I meant it." "Then don't go." She reached for his hand. He pulled it away. "Tyler." He turned his chair and rolled away, fast, nearly bumping into the table. Max barked. Emily stood up and watched him disappear into the hallway. Mark walked in behind her. "I'll talk to him." "No," she said. "Let him feel it. He's heartbroken," she said, her voice sharper than usual. "That's what this is." Mark didn't argue. Her car pulled up outside. She walked to the door, reached for the handle, then stopped. "Please take care of him." "I will." She turned and looked at him one last time. "Tell him I didn't want to go." Then she left. The house felt different as soon as the door closed. Quieter, yes, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that pressed down on your chest and made the walls feel too close. Upstairs, Tyler locked his bedroom door. Mark stood outside it a few minutes later. "Tyler?" No answer. "I know you're upset. I'm upset too. Can we talk?" "Nothing." Mark sat on the floor with his back against the door. "She's not gone forever. Maybe she just needs time. Maybe we all do." Still no sound. "She was hiding something, and I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't want to make the wrong choice." That's when Tyler spoke, barely loud enough to hear. "You already did." Mark leaned forward. "What?" There was a long pause. Then Tyler said, "You picked the wrong person to believe." That sentence landed hard. Mark stayed there a while longer, but Tyler didn't speak again. The next morning, Tyler didn't come out of his room. He didn't eat. He didn't answer when Mark knocked. By noon, the nurse who used to stop by weekly showed up. Mark had asked her to come just to check in, but Tyler wouldn't open the door for her either. By the second day, he started refusing to use his arms. He wouldn't get out of bed, wouldn't speak, wouldn't move. Mark called Dr. Simmons, the neurologist who used to see him before. The man was kind, but his voice on the phone was clear. If he's choosing not to engage, it's emotional. This isn't about his body, it's about his will. If something happened that pulled him backward, it'll take a lot to get him forward again. That night, Mark stood in Tyler's doorway watching him sleep. Poor, maybe just pretend to. He hadn't spoken more than 5 words since Emily left. Mark sat on the edge of the bed. "She loved you," he said. "She really did." Tyler turned his head away. "I thought I was protecting you," Mark added. "But I think I might have just been protecting myself." Tyler opened his eyes slowly. "She didn't lie to me." Mark looked at him. "No, I don't think she did. I want her back," Tyler said. Mark didn't know how to answer that. He just sat there in the dark, listening to his son breathe. It was the first full sentence Tyler had spoken in 2 days, and it felt heavier than anything Mark had heard in his life. The envelope had been bothering him for days. Mark had left it on the corner of his desk, unopened since the day Emily walked out. Every time he walked past it, he felt something tighten in his chest. Not because of what it said, but because of the way it made him feel. That's when he realized it wasn't the papers inside that were eating at him. It was the way Vanessa had looked at him when she handed it over. That fake, calm voice. That practiced concern. And now, with Tyler completely shut down, barely speaking, barely eating, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he'd listened to the wrong person. He finally sat down at his desk one night and pulled the folder back in front of him. This time, he really looked. Not at the words, but at the details. Fonts. Logos. The way the memo was written. Something was off. The report that claimed to be from a hospital system didn't even have a proper letterhead. It was typed out in plain font. No official formatting. No contact name. Just a signature that looked like it had been copied from somewhere else. The blog post looked more real, but the website address at the top was strange. Mark typed it into his browser. It didn't even exist. The article was fake, fabricated to look like it came from somewhere legitimate. He went downstairs and found Vanessa in the living room, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, watching some cooking show like she had no idea the world was on fire. "We need to talk," he said. She looked up. "Now." Mark held up the papers. "Where'd you get these?" "I told you," she said, sitting up straighter. "A friend of a friend. I had them printed." "No," Mark said. "Where did you really get them?" She rolled her eyes. "Why does it matter?" "Because this article doesn't exist. The report isn't real. And the so-called HR memo is just a Word doc with a fake logo at the top." Vanessa put the wine glass down slowly. "Okay, so maybe I cleaned it up to make it easier to read. But the information is real." "Is it?" he asked, voice sharp now. "Because I called the hospital. There was no incident, no investigation. Emily resigned. That's it. She left quietly. No one was hurt. No one complained. They said she was respectful, quiet, and good with the kids." "So what's the truth, Vanessa?" Vanessa's face dropped. Her cool mask cracked. "You lied," Mark said. "I didn't lie. I protected you. You lied," he snapped, louder now. "You made up fake evidence and handed it to me like it was real. You pushed her out of this house. You watched what she meant to Tyler and still decided to tear her down." Vanessa stood up. "She was replacing you. She was crawling into your life, your son's life, acting like she belonged there. I had to do something." "You didn't have to do anything," Mark said, voice low again. "You chose to. And now my son won't speak. He won't move. He's broken again. All because you were afraid of someone getting too close." Vanessa folded her arms. "So what now? You go chasing after her? Like she's the answer to everything?" "I don't know," he said. "But I'm sure of one thing. I let the wrong person go. He left the house that night. He didn't pack a bag. Didn't take much. Just grabbed his keys, put on his coat, and walked out. He didn't even tell Vanessa goodbye. She stood in the hallway and watched him leave like she wasn't sure if he was serious. He didn't look back. It took him hours to find her. He started with the church office, the one that originally connected them. It was closed when he got there, but the lights were on inside. He knocked until someone opened the door. A woman in her 60s, small-framed, kind eyes. "I'm looking for Emily Dawson," Mark said. "She used to work with you." The woman's face softened. "She left our housing months ago, but I know where she is now." She gave him an address 2 towns over. Mark drove in silence. The sound of the engine, the only thing keeping his mind from racing. He thought about the first time he saw her, about the way Tyler had laughed that day in the living room, about the way she stood beside him when he took his first steps, the way she said goodbye. He found her at a diner off the side of a quiet highway, the kind of place with flickering lights and tired booths. She was wearing a plain black apron and had her hair tied up in a messy bun. She didn't see him walk in right away. She was clearing a table near the window. When she turned and saw him, she froze. Mark didn't speak. He just stood near the door, hands in his coat pockets. Emily put the tray down slowly. "What are you doing here?" He stepped closer. "I needed to see you." She didn't move. "I know what happened," he said. "I know none of it was true. Vanessa made it all up. I didn't see it until it was too late." Emily's voice was quiet. "Why now?" "Because my son's not speaking," he said. "Because he's stopped eating. Because he said, I picked the wrong person to believe." Her eyes filled instantly. She looked away. "I let you walk out that door because I got scared," Mark said. "And I've regretted it every hour since." "I didn't come to your house to get close to you," Emily whispered, "or to take anything. I just wanted to help a boy who reminded me of someone I lost. Mark nodded. You told me once you'd explain. When you were ready. I was never going to be ready, she said. Then don't explain, he said. Just come back. She shook her head. It's not that simple. It is, Mark said, stepping closer. Come home. He needs you. I need you. Emily stared at him for a long time. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just stood there, the diner lights flickering above them, the smell of coffee in the air, and all the noise of the kitchen fading behind her. Then the manager called from the back. Emily, you good? She looked toward the kitchen, then back at Mark. I don't know yet, she said. Then she turned and walked behind the counter. And Mark just stood there, heart pounding, unsure if he had found her again, or lost her for good. Mark came back the next day. He didn't call first, didn't text. He just showed up. It was late afternoon, quiet. The diner was emptier than the night before. Emily wasn't working. She was sitting at a corner booth by the window, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. She looked up when he walked in. No surprise in her face this time. She just nodded toward the bench across from her. He took the seat without saying anything. Neither of them spoke for a while. Outside the window, a family walked past. A mum, a dad, and two kids laughing about something only they understood. Emily followed them with her eyes until they disappeared around the corner. I had a son, she said finally. Mark didn't move. He just listened. I got pregnant when I was 19. It wasn't planned. His name was Owen. She looked down at her hands, like they were someone else's. I wasn't ready to be a mum. The father, Daniel, he said he'd be there, but he changed his mind 2 weeks after we found out. I was scared, broke, and I didn't have family, so I signed the papers. Gave Owen up for adoption. Mark stayed quiet. I didn't know where he went. Closed adoption. I never saw him again, but I thought about him every day. Always wondered if he was happy, if someone was taking care of him the way I couldn't. Her voice cracked a little, but she didn't stop. I went to nursing school because of him. I wanted to be close to kids like him. I told myself I could still help, even if I couldn't be there for him. She took a breath, slow and heavy. 8 years later, I was working at St. Luke's. I came in for a shift, and there he was. Owen. Same name, same age, same allergy written on the chart. Mark's eyes didn't leave her. I didn't tell anyone. That would have broken the rules. I wasn't supposed to even think that he was mine, but I stayed close. I checked on him more than I should have. I made sure his room was clean. I brought him snacks when no one was watching. I didn't tell him who I was. I didn't think I ever would. She rubbed the side of her hand like it still hurt. One night, he had a reaction to a new medication. It wasn't mine, I didn't approve it. Another nurse did. But I was on shift. I found him struggling to breathe. Hit the code button, called for help. He made it. But the parents freaked. Said I must have done something wrong. The hospital didn't want a lawsuit, so they told me it was best to resign quietly. Mark sat back, taking it all in. I didn't fight it. I couldn't. I felt like it was punishment. For being there, for getting too close. She stared out the window again. I left town. Took whatever work I could find. I never saw Owen again. The parents moved, changed their contact info. Daniel disappeared again, like he always did. Emily looked back at Mark, her eyes tired but clear. I've carried that for years. The guilt, the wondering. I never told anyone, not even the church program. I just kept going, trying to find places where I could be useful. When I walked into your house, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I just saw a boy who'd lost something big, and I wanted to help. Mark leaned forward. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I was scared, she said. That you'd look at me different. That you'd think I came into your life for the wrong reasons. He nodded slowly. I didn't, she added. Everything I did for Tyler, every word, every moment, that was real. Mark's throat tightened. I know it was. They sat in silence again, both of them staring down at the table. I should have believed you, he said. You were trying to protect him, she replied. I didn't protect him, Mark said. I let someone rip the one steady thing out of his world. He's not talking, not moving, he's back in the dark. Emily looked away. I didn't want to make things worse. That's why I stayed away. He needs you. Emily blinked fast. And what about you? Mark didn't answer right away. I do too, he said. She shook her head gently. It's not that simple. Maybe it is, he said. Come home. I don't know if I can. Why? Because going back means facing everything. It means telling the truth. It means hoping he still trusts me. Mark nodded. He does. Emily wiped under her eye fast. I need time, she whispered. I'll wait. He reached across the table slowly and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The world didn't stop. But for that moment, neither of them needed it to. Mark sat on the edge of Tyler's bed, same as he'd done every night since Emily left. But this time, Tyler wasn't curled up under the blanket like usual. He was sitting up, legs stiff, arms folded over his chest, staring at the blank wall like he was trying to burn a hole through it. Mark leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I found her. Tyler's eyes moved, barely, but he didn't speak. She's okay, Mark said. She's been working at a diner. Small place. Same smile. Same Emily. Tyler blinked once, then looked down at his lap. I told her the truth, Mark went on. About how we've been. About how you've been. Tyler swallowed hard. I asked her to come back. Tyler looked up. Did she say yes? Mark hesitated. She said she needed time. Tyler's face dropped. But she's thinking about it, Mark added quickly. She didn't say no. I think she wants to. She's scared. About how we'd look at her. But everything. I wouldn't look at her different, Tyler said. Mark nodded. I told her that. But I think it'd help if she heard it from you. Tyler looked toward the window, then back again. She thinks I blame her. I don't know, Mark said gently. But I think she's blamed herself for a long time. It's even before she met us. Tyler reached for the small notebook on his nightstand. The one where he sometimes wrote down things he couldn't say. He opened it to a blank page, scribbled for a second, then held it out. Mark read the note. Please bring her back. That was it. Just those 4 words. But it was everything. The next morning, the house felt different. Not louder, just hopeful. Tyler got out of bed without being asked, ate half his toast, asked to go outside. By afternoon, he was sitting in the sunroom, Max curled up by his feet, while Mark stood by the window, phone in hand. He stared at the screen for a long time before finally pressing call. Hey, he said when she answered. He wants you here. There was a pause on the other end. Okay, Emily said. Mark looked toward the sunroom. Today? Another pause. I'm already on my way, she said. 3 hours later, Tyler was back in the living room, watching something on the TV, but not really paying attention. His fingers tapped against the armrest. Max perked up before anyone heard the knock. Then there it was. A soft knock at the door. Mark opened it. Emily stood there with her suitcase in one hand, her hair pulled back, her eyes unsure but warm. Hi, she said. Mark stepped aside. You sure? She asked. He didn't answer, he just nodded. She walked in slowly, like the air itself was unfamiliar now. Tyler turned when he heard her steps. His eyes locked on hers. She froze, waiting. Then he reached out a hand. She came closer, knelt beside him. Hi, buddy. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something but didn't know what would come out. Then he whispered, I missed you. She swallowed hard. I missed you too. Tyler didn't blink. Please don't leave again. I won't, she said. Then he leaned forward, arms stiff but reaching, and wrapped them around her neck. That's when it happened. He pulled back slightly, his face pressed near her shoulder, and said without thinking, Mum? Emily froze. Mark, standing just behind them, felt his breath catch. Tyler pulled away a little, eyes wide. I didn't mean... Emily touched his cheek. It's okay. It felt... He started, then stopped. She nodded. It's okay. He looked at her, tears forming now. I know you're not, but it felt like you were. She smiled, eyes full. I know. Mark walked over, sat beside them both. No one said anything for a long time. Then Tyler reached for Emily's hand and whispered, You can stay here forever if you want. Emily didn't answer right away. She just gripped his hand tighter. And that was enough. It didn't happen the way anyone expected. No music playing in the background. No group of people standing around cheering. No countdown. Just a quiet afternoon in the house, the sun coming in through the back windows, and a boy sitting on the floor with a dog asleep beside him. Emily was folding laundry on the couch, humming something soft under her breath. Tyler was nearby, flipping through one of his old picture books. He didn't read it anymore, he just liked the feel of it. The pages were worn, corners bent, but he always seemed calmer when he had it in his lap. Max let out a small snore, stretched one paw, then settled again. Can I get a snack? Tyler asked. Emily looked up. You want me to bring it to you? He shook his head. No, I want to get it myself. Her hands froze in the middle of folding a shirt. She didn't say anything right away. Then she nodded slowly. Okay. Tyler set the book aside. He placed both hands on the floor and pushed himself into a seated position, legs bent awkwardly. He shifted one knee under him, then the other. His breath caught. Emily didn't move. She knew better. He placed one hand on the coffee table, the other on Max's back. The dog didn't flinch. Slowly, he got up on one knee, then the other. He paused. Then without a word, he stood, completely. No one holding him, no one helping him. Just Tyler, standing. He didn't look at Emily. Not yet. He looked straight ahead at the kitchen. focused. Then he took one step. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't smooth. His foot dragged slightly, his arms wobbled. But it was his. All his. Then another. Then one more. Emily still didn't move. She watched with her hands over her mouth, tears already building, heart racing, not even breathing. Tyler reached the edge of the kitchen counter, grabbed the edge for balance, and looked back. Emily stood up slowly. Tyler. He smiled, not wide, not loud, just a small, proud smile like he knew. I did it, he whispered. She nodded, her voice breaking. You did. He looked down at his feet. Get up again. I didn't even feel scared. You don't have to anymore, she said. Mark walked in a minute later, carrying a folder from his office, not expecting anything. He stopped cold when he saw Tyler standing. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, stunned. Tyler turned toward him, one hand still resting on the counter. Hi, he said, casual. Mark's eyes filled instantly. Are you? I just walked here, Tyler said. By myself. Emily stepped back, giving them space. Mark crouched slowly, eyes wide. How did it feel? Good, Tyler said. Like, I was in control. Mark nodded, still too choked up to say anything more. Emily stayed quiet, letting them have this moment. She knew how long it had been building. All the therapy, the waiting, the heartbreak, the silence. And now here he was, on his feet, standing tall, smiling. Later that afternoon, Vanessa stopped by. She hadn't been there since the night Mark confronted her. She said she was just dropping something off, a book she'd borrowed from the library in town that belonged to Mark. She didn't expect to come in, didn't expect anyone to say much, but when she stepped inside and saw Tyler walking down the hallway slowly, steadily, her mouth fell open. He passed her with a polite "Hi, Aunt Vanessa," and kept going. She looked at Mark. He just said, "He's been practicing," quietly. Vanessa didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she set the book down and nodded. He looked stronger. Emily came into the hallway from the other side, holding a small basket of laundry. Vanessa looked at her. Not with the same cold stare as before, not with warmth either, but there was something new in her eyes, something softer. You're staying then? She asked. Emily looked at her directly. If they'll have me? Vanessa nodded slowly. Good. That was all she said. Then she turned and left. Later that night, Tyler was already in bed when Emily came in to say goodnight. He was sitting upright, legs under the blanket, a big grin stuck to his face. You walked, she said. I'm going to do it again tomorrow. She smiled. I know you will. He looked up at her. You think I'll be normal now? Her smile faded just a little. She sat beside him. I've always been normal. He blinked. But I couldn't walk. That didn't make you less, she said. This is just something your body needed time to catch up to. Your heart's been ready for a while. He thought about that for a second. I wasn't ready before. She ran a hand gently over his hair. No, but you are now. He leaned into her side, yawned and closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, sleep came easy. It was raining the day it all came out. Not a thunderstorm, not some loud dramatic moment, just a slow, cold drizzle that made everything feel heavier. Emily was in the kitchen, folding towels. Tyler was sitting at the table with Max, feeding him pieces of apple one at a time, laughing at how gently the dog took each bite. Mark came in from the garage, hair a little wet, jacket damp at the shoulders. He carried a shoebox under one arm. Not new old, dusty like it had been pushed to the back of a closet for years. Emily looked up. What's that? I don't know, Mark said. I was going through storage, found some things from the accident. I didn't know this was still here. He opened the box on the counter. Slow. Inside were papers, a bent keychain, a hospital bracelet with Tyler's name on it, and an envelope. The envelope was sealed, but something about it made Emily freeze. Mark picked it up, frowning. This isn't my handwriting. He opened it. Inside was a short letter, folded once. He read it silently. Then again. Emily stepped forward. What is it? Mark handed it to her, his face pale. She read it. Her hands trembled. The note was written in pen, in shaky handwriting. Mark, there's something you deserve to know. The night of the accident, your wife's car was hit by someone I love more than anything. My son. He was drunk. He wasn't supposed to be driving. He panicked, fled the scene. The police never connected him. And I kept my mouth shut, because I thought I was protecting him. But I wasn't. I was just burying what I couldn't face. I'm sorry. You don't have to forgive me. I just couldn't live with you, never knowing. Vanessa Emily folded the note slowly and set it on the counter. Mark didn't speak. He walked to the window, arms crossed, staring out at the rain. She never told me, he said after a while. She wrote it, Emily said quietly, but didn't send it. Mark nodded. I wouldn't have believed it. Do you believe it now? He was quiet. Yeah, I do. He turned to her. Did you know? Emily hesitated, then nodded. Not at first. But after she gave me the fake report, I started looking. I remembered a last name from the hospital file. One of the nurses mentioned it. Said the kid that hit them had a mother who worked in finance. Something clicked. I put it together. And you didn't tell me? I didn't know how, she said. It wasn't my story to tell. And part of me thought, if you knew, everything would break all over again. Mark leaned back against the counter, face heavy. He killed her. Emily didn't answer. He took her from me. He took my wife. And she knew. She was trying to protect her son, Emily said softly. And I lost mine in the process, Mark whispered. Emily stepped closer. But he came back. Mark nodded slowly, eyes filling. Yeah, he did. In the hallway, Tyler called out. Dad? Mark wiped his face with the back of his hand. Yeah? Can we go outside? I want to try walking to the mailbox. Mark's chest rose with a deep breath. He looked at Emily. You ready? She smiled, gentle. Let's go. Tyler stood on his own by the door, gripping the handle, proud and focused. Mark opened the umbrella. Emily held his other hand. Together they stepped outside into the soft rain. The air smelled like wet grass and pine. Tyler walked slow, step by step, face determined. Emily didn't look back. But she knew what Mark was thinking. Some stories don't end with justice. Some end with forgiveness. And that's what this one was. Because she could have told him the truth earlier. She could have used it to push Vanessa out, to get back what she lost. But she didn't. She stayed quiet. She gave space. She loved them both without needing to be the center. And somehow, that made her everything. Tyler reached the mailbox and touched the handle. He turned and grinned. I win. Emily laughed. You sure did. Mark smiled, wet from rain, heart wide open. And for the first time in years, there was nothing missing.